All right, we're technically live, and we have 1 minute 20 to go.
Cool.
See how hopefully the connection's good this time. I'm seeing a comment flowing through, so that's good. At least we're there. It's working.
It's always good.
All right, 10 seconds. Okay. Alright, g'day guys, welcome once again to the Tripod. As you guys know, if you've watched us before, if you haven't, we're Alex and Jacob, and we're going to be breaking down every single NRL game every week from a betting perspective. 6 p.m. Queensland time on Wednesdays we'll have the round preview, and 6 p.m. on Sundays Queensland time we'll have the round recap. Really good round last week, as you know, 14 best bets, 1, 3 lost, as well as cashing 4 other multis. You would have seen in the graphic earlier, if you put $100 on every single one of our bets, you'd be up just a touch under $3,000 in profit. So, very good week. But before we do dive into week 2, what I did want to say is that, you know, we're not going to go 14-3 every single week. That is an unsustainable clip. If you're betting $1.90 lines, which we are, our average is $1.89, you know, you have to hit about 52.5% of your bets to break even. Now, we aim for kind of 55%. That's a very profitable punter. We've been able to hit 60% over the last 4 years. But yeah, just be aware that we're not going to go 14-3 every single week. There will be ups, there will be downs, but long term we will still be profitable. So don't go crazy and throw your entire bankroll on round 2 tips just because we had a really great round in round 1. Jacob, how are you, buddy?
Good, thanks, mate. Yeah, cheers to a great round. You're right, we can't win 83% of our tips every week, but I think we seem to say the same thing every season. We always start off hot. Last couple of years we were like 10-0, 13-0. We're like, guys, do not assume every tip we give out is guaranteed to win. There will be a time, unfortunately, I'm sad to say, we'll lose 4 or 5 in a row. So as long as you're winning, as you said, you know, if you can win 6 out of 10, you're doing brilliantly. We have done that for the last 4 years. Not only do we give you all these tips for free, we tell you why we're betting on it. You don't have to agree with us every time. We're not going to be right 100% of the time, as we said, but you can hear our reasoning behind it. And if there's a fact we're overlooking, you can talk to us in our group. We've got a link to our group there. You mentioned the multis. I just wanted to quickly do a recap. We won our same game multi, $4.40 in the Bunnies game. We had a head-to-head multi. Our 4 favourite head-to-head sides won over $8. 3-leg multi on Unibet paying $6.50. A Lads Boost multi on Saturday paying $3.50. And we had the 20-1, which crashed down on Sunday afternoon, which the final leg was the Titans, the only loser. Actually, it was 20-1 with a 20% cash boost. It was going to pay like 24-1. And I did want to say, you know, we said we're going to be really selective. We may not bet on every game. We want to really make sure we're finding value so we can win 60%. We went through the games, and what did we do? We ended up having money on every single game. But that was justified because we won 7 out of 7 games we won money on. Only the Titans game, we had 3 tips and we went 1-2. So sour note, but we recapped the round on Sunday anyway, so we won't dwell on it. But some overall points. We spoke about the short point spreads. No line was greater than 4.5 last weekend. And the funny thing is, no game was decided by less than 6 points. We had 1 game decided by 6. Every other game decided by greater than a converted try, which is kind of funny. Don't assume that's going to continue. We like taking the plus points on underdogs, and there's plenty of times throughout a season you love having those points in your back pocket. Another trend from round 1, very low scoring. About 2 or 3 less line breaks per game than round 1 a year ago. Way less penalties, and I wonder if less penalties means slower play the balls. but it was better. It did flow a little more. And the other thing was weather conditions. Quite a lot of games played in very poor weather. So don't assume that we're going to have a lower scoring 2019. Could have been a few factors for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's start with the first game on Thursday night. We've got the Dragons +4 hosting the Rabbitohs. 38.5 is the total. And like Jacob said, what you might notice in this week's games is the totals have dropped a few points, 1 or 2 points from last week's averages, and that could be an overreaction to all the low-scoring games in those wet weather. So, but let's deep dive into the Rabbits-Dragons game. Obviously, the Dragons coming off that loss in Townsville, but the Cowboys were too good, and we were on the Cowboys in that one, and I do expect big things from the Cowboys this year. I'm very high on them. And I guess in one of the more surprising results for most punters, I mean, we were on the Rabbits, but the Rabbits beating the defending champs in the Roosters and taking care of them quite handily. But yeah, like I said as well, with the Cowboys game, we were on the Rabbitohs in that one. We thought that they'd start the season quite well, and we thought that the Roosters might come in a little bit lethargic. So the big news, obviously, coming out of last week for the Dragons is Tyson Frizzell is out. He has a busted nut. He's probably going to be out for about 4 to 6 weeks, which really does hurt because they've already lost DeBellin, and you know they're getting a little bit thin there. The issue I have, I guess, I leaned Dragons in this one. I just thought that the line at 4 points was a little bit too high for me, especially at home. A team coming off a bit of a drubbing there in Townsville, and meanwhile, a bit of a bounce back spot for the Dragons. Meanwhile, the Rabbits are coming off an absolutely massive win over a big rival. I could see a slight letdown spot for the Rabbits here. So I certainly lean Dragons. The way I kind of thought of it was, if we flipped home favourites here, and the Rabbits were at home, are the Rabbits really going to be 7-8 point favourites? I don't think so. So my lean is with the Dragons, but I'd be just as happy to leave the game.
You mentioned the line 4, but if you like the Dragons, 4.5s are out there. Whereas I actually lean on the other side. I do like the Rabbits, and we've spoken about why we had concerns in this season 2019, why the Rabbitohs might not be the contender they were last year. And, durability concerns with your Burgesses, your Suttons, your GIs, your Johnston, who's had hammy issues, and Reynolds with an injury history. But they're all healthy right now. This is a very strong team right now, and Reynolds had a masterclass against the Roosters. And I look closer at him the guy's been unlucky with some of the shit that's happened to him, breaking a thumb, like appendicitis a week before the season. He's 28. You can make a case that when he's healthy, he's as good as any 7 in the comp. And when you say you've got a healthy Johnson who looked fast in poor conditions last week, and Cody Walker playing as well as he has, and Damien Cook, who was the Australian hooker, you can make a case this is the best spine in the comp, right up there. Whereas the Dragons are in serious trouble. You spoke about it. You lose a workhorse like Frizzell on top of losing DeBellin, and that's trouble when they've got a new spine and new combos behind a depleted pack. So I really believe that the Rabbitohs will be too good again, and Dragons will have trouble on their hands. And I'd probably lean towards laying the 4, if anything, in this one.
Yeah, I really wonder how long they're going to leave Widdop there at fullback. It just, I know it's an experiment, but it's a short season. You really need to get that cooking early on. Let's move on to the Friday early game. We got the Raiders +4 at home to the Storm. 41.5 is the total. And speaking of Storm, the weather report does say thunderstorms are expected for this one. We haven't got a play on it quite yet, but I have put my own money on the under 41.5. I do think that number drops before game time. Thunderstorms meant to be throughout the afternoon and throughout the night there in Canberra. The good things for the Storm here, I guess, are you do get 3 extra days rest than the Raiders. Obviously, the Raiders played the Sunday game in soppy conditions, and often that is a little bit more brutal on your body, whereas the Storm played Thursday. And I know that, we kind of say that getting into the later part of the season, that extra rest certainly helps. We discussed this earlier on in the day, Jacob, about rest actually helping in the earlier part of the season as well. When teams are coming in, they don't have the match fitness. So those extra 3 days certainly help. On the injury front, Rapana is going to make a start, they reckon, anyway, which is a little bit earlier than expected. I am high on the Raiders this year. However, I understand how good this Storm team is. We saw what they did to the Broncos last week. I would still say that the Broncos are a better outfit than the Raiders. At 3.5, that is getting a little bit too low for us. So we've got a couple of best bets there on the board. If you can read them, I'll read them out after Jacob speaks as well. But I do trust the Storm as well. Kicking game and that sort of thing with Cam Smith in there in wet weather as well. So, we're going to be on the Storm in this one, and we probably will have a few more plays on the under in tomorrow morning.
Yeah, Jordan Rapana back. I'm shocked because he was meant to be out half the season, then it was 8, and then it was at least 4. You wouldn't think it's an act of desperation because they played great last week, and his replacement, the bloke who played rugby sevens for New Zealand, Simonson, off the top of my head, he even had a try. But Rapana must be good to go. And, he's been one of my favourite players, most electric outside backs in the competition. So that's exciting for the Raiders. Yeah, I think the 8-day turnaround for Storm, though, a side, kind of a veteran side, that they're going to be well and truly prepared for this one. Whereas the Raiders, that is a bit stiff that somehow by round 2, the NRL can serve them up a 5-day turnaround.
It's pretty good.
And another couple of points I'd make would be, we watched the Storm play Thursday night. That game could have easily, if Brisbane lets go of the rope, or if the Storm capitalise on a couple more chances, Storm run away with that one and win by 30
Absolutely.
or 40. Instead, valiant effort by Brisbane. Storm didn't take their chances. It ended up being a lot closer. I think the Storm actually were very impressive and could have won by a lot more. Contrast that to the Raiders, where the Titans had everything go wrong for them. Apart from the appalling conditions, you lost Ash Taylor, you lost Roberts 5 minutes into the game, and they just could not hold the ball. So I think that, that 21-0 maybe flatters the Raiders. Not that they didn't play well, but their opponent was so bad and in such trying conditions. So I do like the Storm as just a more clinical side here. I mean, I love the addition of Bateman. How good was he in his element in the wet,
Yes.
at locking the scrum for the Raiders. And Hodgson's playing as well as any 9. You could argue he could be better than Cameron Smith right now. But I still do think that the Storm is the more clinical, more experienced side, while Raiders, Whiten's kind of new back in the halves there. Nickel Clockstad at fullback is also new. I still think I want to go with the foundation that the Storm have early in the year while they're healthy, and they'll get the job done here. That's why we've got the best bets on them.
Yep, and we're taking 2 best bets on this one. First of all, we're taking the Storm minus 3.5 points. That one is $1.83 on Unibet, and we're taking the Raiders under 8.5 points in the first half. That one's $1.80 on Sportsbet. And for you newbies out there, obviously we don't have that much space on the screen to write the full bookie down, so we're just using abbreviations. So if you see Uni, it's going to be Unibet. If you see Sportsbet, SB, it's going to be Sportsbet. And it looks like, Jacob, seems like the comments are flowing through that we've crashed the Unibet site already. So must be a bunch of you lads getting on. So leave some for the others, boys. Next up, let's go to the Broncos hosting the Cowboys. Broncos are 4-point favourites. The total is the lowest of the round, 37.5 points. So I guess last week, obviously, the Broncos coming off that loss to the Storm, they get a couple of extra days rest, and they will want to bounce back from that one and not go into an 0-2 hole. But Cowboys, very clinical up there in Townsville, and I've made no secret that I'm very, very high on the Cowboys this year. I think they have the potential to be a top 4 team, and they will be much improved. So I actually really love the Cowboys, and I like them in this spot as well. So I certainly lean Cowboys. I also lean over. This is a very low total. I understand that it's a rivalry game, big brother, little brother, that kind of stuff. And I get that the Broncos, are going to take some time to integrate all those new players, get the chemistry forming there, and all that kind of stuff. But like we mentioned last week with, player fatigue and that kind of stuff in the early rounds, plus you have the fact that, a bunch of games went under last week due to weather conditions, so they've chopped the totals down a couple of points this week. But let me tell you, chemistry will improve faster than match fitness will. So I expect to see, something a bit better out of the Broncos this week. But I still do think that the Cowboys can absolutely hang with them. These are generally very close games. And, you could argue that the Cowboys are the better team in this one. Definitely. You could make a strong argument for that. So certainly like the Cowboys in this one. And also I think we'll probably have some plays on the over come tomorrow morning.
If people can remember round 2 a season ago, it was only the goalpost that protected Brisbane in that one. Scott Bolton colliding, dropping the ball when he was about to plant it down, under the black dot there, and it ended up being a 24-20 victory to Brisbane thanks to that kind of crazy play. And it was typical of the matchups that we get between these two. So many, as we know, have gone down to the wire. I probably do make the case that the Cowboys are the stronger team right now. We have suspended Matt Lodge. In this forward pack, where I already made the point last week that Gillette and, Bird's playing in the centres, but some of those bigger guys that have been out of the game for quite a long time, they need a few more games under their belt, I feel. There's still no Payne Haas in this team either. James Roberts was out after 5 minutes a week ago. Now he's named, but with the back issues there, you'd have to be wondering, is he 100%? And look, this is not breaking news, but it's worth saying it. Taumalolo is a fucking monster. He is a force of nature, and we know how good he is, and we've loved him. And I was arguing with people a couple of years ago that 10 years, 10 million was a good deal for the Cowboys. You just can't lock in players like that very often.
You know you have a good forward pack when you can put Maguire on the bench.
Yeah, but you know you have a good forward pack if you have Taumalolo and then anybody else. He's an absolute freak. So, of course, and he will lead the way. As you say, it's a very deep forward pack too, and I think it can be the difference. Brisbane, as we saw, they want to spread it wide. They want to play expansive. The Storm were very disciplined, did not let them open them up. And I think that the Cowboys are another disciplined outfit as well that will not, just let Brisbane run riot on them. So I think the Cowboys can hang in that regard. And plus 4.5 is too many points. So we're going to lock it in as a best bet.
Totally agree. So as you guys can obviously see on the screen, but for anyone that's listening in podcast form, we will be taking the Cowboys plus 4.5 points. That one is $1.85. You see there that I've got written Sportsbet other markets, because if you just go to the regular bet, the regular line, I think it is like $1.83. But you scroll
it might even have moved to 4 on Sportsbet regular line. But if you go to other at the bottom of the app,
if you scroll right down to the bottom, you'll see other markets, and that one will be plus 4.5. At $1.85. Little things like this that you learn being a degenerate punter for 12 years. And we'll also be taking the Cowboys plus 2.5 points in the first half. That one is $1.83. You can find that one on both Sportsbet and Unibet, if Unibet is back up again. Next up, we've got the Sharks minus 7.5 points hosting the Titans. 39.5 is the total. Obviously, poor losses from both teams last week. I mean, can't take too much away from the Sharks, but I mean, only scoring, 6-8 points last week against the Knights. And we mentioned this, that it might take some time, for Shaun Johnson to get acclimated there, for the chemistry to form. Obviously, also a bit wet weather conditions contribute to that as well. Now, on the Titans front, obviously the big news, and that was pretty much the only news that fucked our best bets, is Ash Taylor's not only going to be out, but also Tyrone Roberts is going to be out. So you've got, a Sharks team that's still kind of incorporating Shaun Johnson. You've got a Titans team that's lost their halves. But 7.5, I don't really want to lay 7.5 points with the Sharks. If anything, I would lean to the Titans here. I think, it's going to be fine weather, but with these halves kind of, they're not going to try and do too much, I think, especially with both teams off losses. I think it will be a forward battle, and I think that the Titans can easily hang with the Sharks in a forward battle. But it's just, it's too much uncertainty there in how the halves for the Titans will perform in order for me to put my money on the Titans. But also like the under as well, just because I do think it'll be a grind, both teams trying to get their first win and just become a forward battle.
Yeah, the Titans forward pack, I still stand by the fact they are quality. Had too many errors in them, like trying to offload the ball in terrible conditions last week. But not only are they quality, I expect they lift. And you're right, I think they can match it with the Sharkies forwards. The issue I've got is the halves, as you touched on. Now, Riley Jacks and AJ Brimson, both really quality young players, but they've never played together, and neither of them was planned to be starting in the halves. And to have them both play against Cronulla, that is a really good defensive unit, One thing you can take away from that Knights game, they were under siege. They defended their line really well, and that's actually stifled their attack, because whenever they did get the ball, they were often coming off their line. So I think the Sharks have a little bit more to offer. And the Titans have other problems with outside backs as well. Like, you got Flash Gordon, at fullback there, but his name's Flash Gordon because he used to be fast. But he's not fast anymore.
He struggled, yeah.
He's just not, I keep saying this, but you need, game breakers. You need your best attacking weapons in the fullback position. And he's solid and doesn't make too many mistakes, although he still had a couple, but as most of them did in the rain last week. But he's not a game breaker anymore, so that's a problem. Philip Sammy, who I really like, they've moved to the bench. Why are you putting a winger on the bench? So I don't like what they're doing with their combos, especially in the back line. That's why I actually don't want the Titans this week. But over 6 points is too many to lay with the Sharkies as well. I agree with you. I lean to the under.
Sounds good to me. And next one, this is the Knights hosting the Panthers. The Knights are 2-point favourites, and 39.5 points is the total. Wow, the Knights fans are going to be chomping at the bit here. 2-point favourites against the Panthers. Who could have ever seen that coming in round 2? But I think it is quite deserved. I mean, the Knights had a solid performance last week. I understand that they're going to take a little while to gel, but I mean, beating the Sharks, by 6 points in a tough, gritty performance, it is very admirable, and the Knights fans should be absolutely pumped for this one. On the Panthers front, really, really disappointing loss to the Eels. I mean, we kind of said that they may come in a little bit distracted with all the scandal going on and that kind of thing, but the Eels came to play. Take nothing away from the Eels. They played very, very well in that one. The Knights do get a couple of extra days rest than the Panthers, which we said is quite important at this time of the season as well, with the Panthers playing on that Sunday. The Panthers get Katoa back from the concussion, which will certainly help them. Generally, you do want to play an 0-1 team like the Panthers against a 1-0 team here in the Knights. I think that, for me, I said I'd lean Knights slightly, but I'd be totally happy to stay away from this game. I do think the Panthers probably bring it, but they also could just completely lay an egg, and their heads could be elsewhere, whereas I do know that the Knights are going to bring it. I know that stadium is going to be absolutely rocking. I know that the players are going to be absolutely stoked trying to get off to a 2-0 start, so I think they bring max motivation, whereas I do not know if the Panthers will bring max motivation, although I do know that they're the more talented roster.
Yeah, and one thing we don't do is overreact to 1 week. And look, Panthers lost, Knights won, but really both those games are very close and in the balance. The Knights won because Edric Lee, took a 90-meter intercept where it easily could have gone the other way. The Sharks only needed to put 1 on the board, and they would have got the win there. And even the Panthers, after being down 14-0, there was a point in that game where they got back in the game and could have easily stormed home with it, and the Eels held their nerve well. But there are still issues for the Panthers, of course. Still waiting for Viliame Kikau. Hame Sele looked like he'd broken his arm, but now he's been named to play, been cleared of the broken arm. I think Isaiah Yeo had a concussion as well, but seems to be cleared. And they've moved Luai to the reserves. I actually thought he added something off the bench, but maybe Katoa can be that kind of extra catalyst at rake there that can help them in their attack. But, going back to the loss to the Eels, I feel like that game is lost in a couple of moments. Like Wonga Blake, one of the most elusive outside backs in the comp and loves holding the ball out in one hand. He couldn't get it down, in a one-on-one, barging over Mitchell Moses, gets punked by Mitchell Moses, and then later in the game, didn't like the way Mitchell Moses treated him in a tackle, went over and pushed him over and gave away a penalty while his team was in possession. So that's Mitchell Moses, owning territory inside Wonga Blake's head at that point. And those two plays turned the game. Now, the Knights' defense was really good against the Sharks. They conceded 1 try, and it was actually bullshit. It was that penalty try, which I, didn't quite see that was 100% going to be a try. So we had the Knights to concede less than 4 tries. They really conceded none, but we cashed that one easily anyway. But I mentioned before, the possession was massively in their favour, the Knights. Could be a different story if the Panthers put them under some pressure. So I actually believe the Panthers will rebound. I believe they are still a premiership contender, and they've got to be better for this one. And don't forget, just because the Knights won, they've got a lot of improvement in with a lot of new combos. So that's why I lean to the Panthers to get back on track. Definitely I'd take the +2.5 with Penrith. But once again, we're kind of clashing with the side that we're seeing value in. So you guys will have to wait till tomorrow to see if we do agree on anything and share it on the Tripod app as the best bet.
Yeah, that's it. And generally when we disagree on a game, we usually pass it, but we do a full other deep dive. And if anything else comes up or there's something we've missed tomorrow morning, we certainly can be persuaded to go one side or the other. So that's why you need the Tripod app, because you will get a notification as soon as we post those tips tomorrow at about 1 p.m. Queensland time. Next up, we got Manly +8.5 points against the Roosters. 41.5 is the total. This is the biggest spread we've seen so far this year, and for good reason. Manly is cooked. Without Tommy Turbo, I really struggle to see how they can put on points, and we kind of saw that last week. But the Roosters, God, I do not want to bet against the Roosters. I know that they have the most talented roster in the comp. So this is an easy one for me. It's like, I don't want to bet on Manly. I know that they're shit. They probably will give effort, but I can't see where the points are coming from without Tommy Turbo. But I don't want to bet against the Roosters either. Off a loss, best team in the comp, and if they get on a roll and get out to a 12-0 lead, they could roll this Manly side. So it's one of those ones where I just would prefer to just watch and not bet. As crazy
and
as
I don't think that Roosters will get out like that. I think Manly was so poor, but they did actually butcher chances and miss tackles. That game could have been a little bit closer, but the Tigers deserved to win. But on top of, obviously Turbo was out. We spoke about Dylan Walker. is definitely a glaring omission in that back line. Adam Fanua-Blake had over 200 metres for him last week. He's suspended now as well. So the thin team gets even thinner. And for me, it's like 8.5 points is a lot of points for a home side that got embarrassed last week. They want to make Brookvale a fortress again. I think they're going to come out max motivation, max effort with Desi Hasler returning, and the crowd should be pumped. But the talent disparity is so great, and it kind of comes down to me, what mood do the Roosters turn up in? Because if the Roosters turn up with the eye of the tiger and just want to make a statement after losing in round one, they will win by 10 or more. But if the Roosters are saying slow and steady wins the race, let's make some small adjustments, but, us of all teams do not need to panic, and they come out and just, focus on completions and things like that, maybe the game's closer. So I don't want to lay, as we say, we don't lay many things. Look at us. True. But we don't want to lay over 8.5 points with the Roosters probably. But if I was to bet Manly plus 8.5, I'd have no confidence because they're just not good enough. And we said before the year it's going to be a long season for them.
Yeah, that's it. And I'm even seeing some comments flow through that line's drifted out to 10.5 now. So I guess there is a lot of people there that think the Roosters will bounce back. Next up, we got the Doggies plus 2.5 points hosting the Eels. 36.5 is the total, the lowest total of the week. And I guess it's understandable. The Bulldogs' attack was non-existent last week. But like I kind of said, if you're in Auckland and the Warriors start getting on a roll, sometimes it is really tough to come back, especially if you're a team like the Bulldogs where, if you want to win games, you really have to win it on the back of your defense. And a Bulldogs team chasing like an 18-point deficit is not something that you want to have your money on. Really impressed with the Eels last week. We kind of mentioned this, and we were so close to taking the Eels against the Panthers once that line got up to 6.5, but there just wasn't enough time to release it. But we did say, the Eels started last season so terribly, lost their first 6 games and just could never rebound. And after such a horrid season, now they've had their first win. I don't think the Eels are going to come in complacent, on too much of a high. I don't think they're going to go out, celebrating and everything. They're going to say, well, fuck, listen, we lost our first 6 games last week and our season turned to shit. Let's try and get 2-0 here. But at the same time, I don't really want to lay 2.5 points with an Eels team that was the wooden spoon favourite to start the season, and they're playing a Bulldogs team at home coming off the worst loss in round one, where absolutely no one wants to bet them. But what I will say is, if you want to bet the Eels, you probably want to bet them now. If you want to bet the Bulldogs, you probably want to wait until Sunday to bet the Bulldogs, because no one is betting on the Bulldogs. There's only going to be Eels money coming from the public from now until Sunday.
Yeah, if you look at round one, it's not hard to say that the Dogs were the worst of all 16 teams. They were awful. But you mentioned that, there was a lot of emotion in that game, and the Warriors were very good and too good for them. And we were on the Warriors, so easy win there. I mean, Dean Pay had to say for his team they weren't physical enough. So now he's named an unchanged side, and their home opener, after getting embarrassed, you have to believe they're going to come out max effort, because people's spots, no one's safe in that team. There's very few stars in that team. So we do know we should get a max effort spot from the Dogs. But you said it as well with the Eels. It's like if they come out and don't play well here and lose a very winnable game, you undo all the hard work and all the great work that they did in their performance last week, where they looked confident, they were gutsy in defence and offloading the ball, and Mitchell Moses looks engaged, making bloody try-saving tackles. You could see he's embracing this leadership of this team. And this Dylan Brown kid is a star in the making. He's legit. He actually takes pressure off Moses because he's a genuine playmaker who looks so composed out there. Looks like he has time. So he's a great find for them. And probably do think the Eels will win. And you're right, nobody wants to bet on the Dogs. No one in the public's thinking, the Dogs are going to win this game. So this line could definitely leak up to 4. But my concerns with the Eels as well is losing Nathan Brown is a massive out. He's the heart and soul of that forward pack. Although I admit it's offset a little bit by getting Junior Paulo's first start of the year. But Jennings is going to be suspended.
Yep.
And Will Smith, I think, had a broken arm as well. So they come in, missing 3 troops, while the Dogs did not suffer a major injury. So there's that edge to the Dogs as well. It's probably just enough to keep me off the Eels.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And like we said, you would have seen we haven't had a bet on any of the last 3 games, and neither with this one. And it's that's kind of how we're able to win at 60% every year. We've said that before. You don't have to bet every game. The advantage the bookie has is that they offer $1.90 when the true odds should be $2. The advantage the punter has is you don't have to bet every game. And to round out the round, Tigers laying 1.5 points against the Warriors. 37.5 is the total. It's a really tough one for me. I did have a slight lean to the Warriors here. I think they are the better team, but I guess that is reflected in the line there, with the Tigers only being 1.5 point home favourites, when they probably, are closer to a 2.5 point home field advantage. So, Tigers, fairly impressive last week, I guess, even though Manly was very bad. That Tigers defence is still very solid, but, how solid it is, I guess we'll see on Sunday, because Manly didn't really mount too much pressure on that Tigers defence. But if we look at last year, it looks like a similar sort of Tigers defence, which was very, very solid. And we kind of said last week, you kind of want to bet on this Tigers team towards the start of the season, because some of their stars are getting a little bit older and their bodies are going to wear down towards the back end of the season. Our concern about the Warriors was those halves, but they looked totally fine. But in saying that, they received very little resistance from the Bulldogs. And when you're at home and everything's going well, it is easy to pile on the points. One thing I would mention, I really do think that the Warriors are going to be max motivated for this one. With everything that's gone on in the past week, in Christchurch, I think that these players, it's not going to be as much of a distraction to them as rather a bit of motivation for them. Bring a win in for New Zealand. I think they're going to come in, and this is going to be like an absolute max motivation spot for the Warriors. So certainly leaning that way. But yeah, I guess we'll see what we do tomorrow morning.
Yeah, you said we haven't released any early best bets on the last 3 or 4 games, but that doesn't mean we won't have bets. It just means nothing's jumping out at us right now that we love, that we think won't be there tomorrow. So we give ourselves more time, because not every bookie puts every market up on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
We don't want to search for the best odds until all the best markets are up. So that's why Thursday's the day that we make it all happen with best bets. But yeah, the Warriors, I agree, probably are the slightly better side. It's hard to gauge how good they are, as you said, because they destroyed the Dogs, and it's easy to say, this Adam Kieran bloke's gun is going to be fine. Yeah,
right.
but when your team is absolutely rolling and has the opponent on the back foot all game, it's a pretty easy day at the office. Tigers will put him under a lot more pressure, and that really is the key matchup, the Tigers defense against the Warriors attack. And I actually kind of believe a little bit more in the Tigers halves in Brooks and actually Benji over the rookie Kieran, who didn't even play halves last year in under 20s, and Blake Green, who does a job no matter where he is. But definitely those Warriors outside backs are superstars, and they were part of the reason that we bet on the Warriors last week. But the Tigers do have a lot of depth. Now, Moses Mbai and Reynolds both named in the reserves, so either of them could come into this team. That's going to be interesting, because the spine actually played well for the Tigers.
Yes.
So I'm not sure who's going to make way. But the Warriors improved too. Papali'i's back. He got a suspension, but back from that now. And Isaac Luke in the reserves too, so could come into the side. But Nathaniel Roach played well in the 9 last week, so be interesting to see which way they go. But yeah, of course, I think we both agree, very tight game. And another edge that you alluded to, in that the Warriors might be the better team and we're getting plus 1.5, so why wouldn't we take that? Well, the game's in Campbelltown.
Right.
And, that means travel for the Warriors. It means home field advantage. It means a raucous, kind of more suburban crowd that can get in the ear of a referee. And if you swing 1 or 2 penalties as well, that's where that advantage all lies. So that's why, and I actually lean the other way. I think, gun to my head, the Tigers probably win this game. So I think the bookmakers have the line pretty close to fair, and that's why we don't have a best bet for you right now.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we've explained this 100 times, but I mean, your average punter looks at those odds and says, okay, Tigers are minus 1.5 points. They're obviously the better team here, but they forget to factor in home field advantage. And we've kind of said, that is, if you average out home field advantage, it should be about 2.5 points. Give or take, like Suncorp is better home field advantage, Townsville, especially coming across the ditch from New Zealand, that kind of stuff. So don't forget to factor in the home field advantage when you're figuring out spreads and that kind of thing. But yeah, that'll wrap it, guys, for week 2 preview. So you can see there on the screen. Make sure you've downloaded the app, because we will do a full deep dive tomorrow. It'll take us a few hours, but we'll come up with as many very, very good bets as we can. You would have heard probably in our voices, I guess, that we probably didn't like this round as much as round 1. And that's probably not the worst thing, because we really liked round 1. We went 14-3. So we're not going to force any bets if we're not super confident in them. And that's why we've been able to go 60%. But
I mean, the simple logic there being, you'd rather not bet, and, avoiding a loser is actually better than backing a winner, because we are risking $11 to win 10 every time we bet. So that simple fact, if we don't feel confident we've got one that wins 60% of the time, we'll let it go. And then sometimes we regret it and the bet ends up winning. And that was definitely the case in round one. There were quite a few that we felt bad. Oh, we should have shared that bet. We were going to give that bet out as well. That's the way it goes sometimes, but we try to be selective. I wanted to make one other point as well. AFL kicks off tomorrow and some lads, follow multiple codes. So there's plenty of AFL tips people have been asking me in our group and on our app as well. It's not just rugby league. If you're interested in anything related to the punt, there are people who follow it in depth and share tips and discuss. So click the link in this video to join our group and join the discussion. But the app tomorrow is where all our best bets and all our multis are going to get released.
Yeah, seems like some pretty good promos for the AFL as well, and we try and post as many good promos as we can in the app. So I've got a couple of AFL ones to let the lads know about. I might post them tomorrow morning. But yeah, that'll do it for this week, guys. Hopefully we can have another winning weekend. I can almost guarantee it won't be as good as 14-3, but that doesn't matter. As long as we can still be in profit by the end of the season, then we're doing well. So tune in on Sunday night, same time for a full. Oh, sorry, it'll actually be an hour later for after the Sunday late game for a full breakdown of round 2. But we'll see you then. Thanks for tuning in.
Cheers, lads.